I'm talking to myself again, running out of things to say. I don't know what to do. I'm sitting in this empty room, watching movies on a broken TV screen. The echoes getting
Madhav, what's going on?
Nothing much, dude.
Sweet. We're here today to talk about music and our relationship to music, as well as our relationship to each other, being student and teacher. So, Madhav, let's start with you. Let's start with some personal questions. What's your music education background?
Yeah, so I have been taught classically in classical Indian drum, like North Indian drum called tabla, and then classical South Indian singing as well. So those are things that I've been taught like properly with a teacher. Or with tabla, a couple teachers; with singing, just one. And then I additionally play guitar and drums, which I taught myself, a bit of bass as well, and like electronic stuff as well. That's all kind of been like hobby sort of situation where I'm just picking it up on the fly. In terms of, so I've been learning tabla and Carnatic, that's the South Indian singing like form, since I was like really little, when we were in Michigan. And then since moving to Boston, obviously my teacher in Michigan was pretty like proper in the way that she did things, like, would only do in-person classes, wouldn't do anything. So for a while I wasn't learning, and then when quarantine rolled around, she started to do Zoom classes. So I was able to take some classes remotely that way. And so yeah, I was doing that for maybe about a year more, and then since then I've kind of just been not learning. And then with tabla, I'm like playing with family, with friends, in religious settings, general devotional, like spiritual settings as well. And with Carnatic, I'm not necessarily performing at any point using it, but again, like with family, friends, and at times I'm asked to sing, so because it's just a classical art form. So yeah, that's kind of the main ones.
What's your relationship like with your say your singing teacher? What's that relationship like?
Yeah, so it's the kind of situation where I was pretty lucky to have met somebody that is doing it so in such a proper way, and like I guess the way that you would think that people would do it in India, because she comes from a pretty long line of it goes like up like generations in terms of like her master's master was like pretty big he did some composing and also did a lot of work, like I think in University of Toledo or something, with like music studies, as well as having learned from a certain line. There's a few different like styles, I guess, that you can sort of see with South Indian singing. I mean, like with any sort of instrument where there's many different schools of like, not like thought but styles, I guess.
Yeah.
So she taught very properly. She would let us write stuff down, but she mostly, and this is the same thing with tabla, like mostly it was taught orally, and sort of expected that you learn it orally and you kind of remember all the things. So that's kind of like, and my teacher was very firm on that kind of stuff, but also a very loving figure, being that she was pretty like soft and like understanding of when we didn't get something, but she was also very firm about like, okay, when I've told you to like do something for homework, you should have it done. So it's kind of sort of like a mom figure, you know what I mean, where it's like, very loving, but when it comes to business, it's business.
Yeah, interesting. Outside of lessons, what kind of music are you attracted to, and how does your formal education play into that?
So when it comes to music that I listen to on the regular, I tend to really like a lot of classic rock stuff, generally rhythm heavy songs I can really get behind, it's always a thing, like when I'm thinking about classical music and what sorts of classical music I like, the pieces, even if they don't have a percussive element, tend to have a pretty strong like rhythmic feel to them, like a rhythmic like movement. I don't really like just like formless, melody. So it typically is like, there's a lot of presence in like drums or something like that, that might, because that's what catches my ear more than anything. But a lot of classic rock, some like metal stuff, like hip hop, like old school hip hop, some like newer stuff as well. Like bluegrass, everything. Dude, I listen to like everything pretty much. And then like also I guess I do listen to a lot of like South Indian generally Indian classical music, like just like enjoying that, because I think I've been given an appreciation of it by having learned at least like some amount, because it gives me like the vocabulary, I guess, to understand it.
It's interesting because my teacher for drums, he's big into the funk scene, grew up in it, and like that's the way he learned. And I guess I never would have counted it out, but I never would expect myself to be listening to funk music, and especially like something like jazz funk. And I find like a lot of the things he's teaching me, I'm like, oh, like I just heard that like little complex piece in this song, and it's like, just because I know it and like understand it, I'm attracted to it, and then you discover all new types of music. Because
it's like you're learning a language, and like I think there is such a like in music generally, like quoting, it's such a big thing. Like
seriously,
especially for talking jazz or like any there's a lot of like quoting of phrases or things like that. So it is like you're learning a language, and you're able to like, oh, I recognize this word or this phrase, which I think is so sick. Yeah, I feel like for me, music is like it makes up the most of my creative outlet. Generally speaking, I have a lot of interests in like art and stuff like that as well, and like comedy, stuff like that. But I think the most of what I end up gravitating towards, where it's like I need to just get energy out, is some form of music. Because I think it's just I grew up around a lot of music, like constantly hearing it. I think my culture is very generally musical, and it has been like a way for me to socialize with people as well. I think like learning and playing music has helped me make a great deal of connections with people. So as such, like I feel like there's a big community in music, both in terms of learning and also in terms of like everybody wants to find other people to play with. It's not so fun to play music by yourself always. Like the collaborative aspect of it is really, really great, and where I feel I do the most learning. And then also like everybody has knowledge on it, so like you can ask anybody questions about anything, and chances are they probably have a different opinion. So like in terms of what I feel other people can get out of music is like I mean it's a way. It's a creative pursuit, right? Which if it's not something that you gravitate towards initially, if you sort of learn, like we were talking about, like if you start to get some of the vocabulary for it, then it can really be for anybody. I think I've heard too many people like, oh, I don't think I could ever do music, or like I don't feel like I have rhythm, or I don't feel, but it's just we say that like, oh, some people are born with rhythm, or but it's just that I've been listening to music, and like it's just in my head because I've heard it so many times. I feel like if anybody is to hear music so many times, or like change their mindset to like, oh, I'm just letting this sound come in and out of my ears, to like, okay, like you can catch that, like, oh, this is the one, or like, oh, they're playing this certain scale or whatever, these notes sound good together. I think it's pretty intuitive to figure out and learn if you put in like the slight bit of effort to like retrain your mind, I guess, a little bit around it. Yeah, it's just a beautiful thing.
And speaking of using music to build relationships, Madhav and I became friends last year in the fall of our freshman semester. We came into school, and I was in a band that I'm still in today. I was playing drums for them. I play drums. I've been playing drums for over 10 years. I'm in 3 groups now, and how did we come across each other? How did we figure out we could play music together?
Yeah, so as I noted, I guess, like, comedy is also, like, one of my creative outlets as well. So improv comedy on campus is, there's certainly a scene for it. So there's a short form improv troupe, Mission Improbable, that I was going to audition for, within the first week, I'm pretty sure, of school, if not the second week. And yeah, so I showed up to auditions, and there were a handful of people there, including Flynn.
What draws me to you and what draws us together is our, I feel as though we're always, looking for knowledge. We're always trying to improve our skills. Yeah. And improv, we met at an audition. We were actively trying to get better at improv and trying to learn improv together and surround ourselves around people who want to learn more about comedy and want to get better at comedy. So, you and I are always seeking out resources and people to lift ourselves up. So we meet in improv, and then naturally we,
music comes up because it's so central.
Music comes up.
Central to both of our lives. It was just natural that it would come up at some point. So, I think it, at one point you must have had your drum set up. I would have gone to like a show of yours or something. Have my guitar on campus. So must have set up a time to jam.
Do a full improv rehearsal, learn comedy, learn improv, learn the art of improv, and then go into playing drums and guitar together. Yes. And I think we started right off of that, like learning some covers together.
Yeah, we're learning some Green Day off top. Just generally like set up like, okay, we're gonna jam on this day. Let's have a couple songs like ready. And then pretty immediately after that, starting to write some stuff as well. Generally just like having fun, like playing our different instruments and also like shifting off. Yeah. Because we were both keen on like getting better at the other person's instrument as well. So.
And you saying that I had like a unique feel and like a unique style was like really like put some fuel in my fire, which was really cool.
It's interesting too, because I think that's what was surprising to me is that I was thinking all that, and then hearing that you'd had such a long like musical background in terms of like learning drums was something that was pretty interesting to me, because I've personally felt that, and it's like a trap that I'd been falling in while learning guitar and drums on my own, was that I felt as though like learning an instrument like traditionally almost like would sit at odds with like having a style. So I think that was so much of a part of like my, it would like stop me at times from like getting lessons and stuff like that, because I was like, I need to build up my own style. I need to learn how to do this on my own. So it was pretty interesting to come to school and see someone. I feel like your playing does exude a very certain, like it's very Flynn. Like Flynn is playing the drums, and you can tell like even by hearing it. And that was something that was kind of different, like for me comparatively to a lot of people that I'd seen that are like really trained in an instrument, and they're really good at what they do, but it feels kind of mechanical at times. I think that that was certainly like a difference that I was seeing, because it was like wow, because I feel like I've cultivated my own style by learning my instrument on my own, but it was just a further reminder that that's not the only way to do that. You can have a structured base and then build off of that.
Growing on your instrument, growth is growth no matter what. And I did not understand that for a long time. Just like I did not fall in love with music until the end of my high school years. So I've been playing for the longest time, just studying and not really having fun. And so like when you make that crossover, it's interesting. And I developed a passion, and I had a whole toolbox already. So in the reading "Representations of the Intellectual" by Edward Said, description. He has a description of what makes a person intellectual. And when I sit down to play music, and my approach to music, I always like to bring like an intellectual feeling. I like to feel the history behind the drums. I like to feel like the responsibility. I like to there's a weight to being the drummer, holding down, having good timing, holding down, keeping the band together, and other stereotypes. it's just like there's a lot of responsibility and history behind being a drummer, and I'm often the student in the situation when I'm learning drums, but I'm a teacher in many cases, and for you and I, like we have a student-teacher relationship that's just there's no student, there's no teacher. We're just being
fluid,
intellectuals.
sure.
It's very fluid. We're being intellectuals and we're sharing knowledge together. So, what are some ways you and I share knowledge?
Yeah, I think when we're both playing and like trading off on drums, or like, you know, generally just showing each other like, oh, like look at this thing I can do.
Yeah.
It's just like I'm being exposed to a different sort of way that the instrument can be played, because you know, if I'm left to my own devices, I'm not going to think that way because I've learned how to play a certain way. And that's the way that my brain works. Like
without even teaching each other the parts, just exposing each other.
Yeah.
Like you've exposed something to me, and then I've sat on it, and the next day I've come in and played it.
Yeah.
And just like that exposure. I mean, if we didn't have each other exposing different styles, like we wouldn't be exposed to it. We wouldn't know it.
I guess. But yeah, we're giving each other new words to use, or like giving each other new ways to think about our instruments. So I think that's certainly, you know, a way that we're student and teacher, and you know, in both roles at the same time.
Yeah. Saeed says that an intellectual knows their audience and who to go to for what advice. And I think that not only do good musicians know their live audience and how to, you know, get feeling out of the audience, but they also have an audience of fellow musicians and resources, like their toolbox that they can cite for information and skills and tips and tricks and everything. And I think that good musicians have resources and know how to get an answer when there's a problem.
You know, whoever you talk to is going to have a different perspective, you know, like on rhythm, on musicality, on anything like that. Everybody's going to have a slightly different perspective, because that's, you know, what makes us who we are. You know, we all have different likes and dislikes. So I think just generally playing music with a lot of people gives me a lot of insight into like, okay, well, this is something that also works. Like, you know, over one like click track, like it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, like I don't know, like 4 drummers will have completely different ways that they go with that, or over a riff, like 4 drummers will have completely different ways that they go about that, and they all may work equally well, but they'll have a drastically different feel to them. Because that also, I can say I definitely learn from other people a lot, because, you know, I only know how to learn what I like, the way that I have my whole life. So it's good to be exposed to different ways to learn and think about learning as well.
Mm-hmm. You know, coming to school, I don't have my private lessons, so something that I've been doing is using the metronome one. Mm-hmm. Every good drummer, you got to use a metronome, but reading and watching people do covers. Mm-hmm. I grew up reading drum tabs, but like you said, like watching people just adds that extra flair and like adds that extra exposure, just watching how other people move. I've been watching a lot of covers of people playing a song, and there's one thing reading it and being like, okay, like I know how it works, but then you watch it while listening to the music, and then you're watching it happen.
That's how it sounds.
Yeah. As today's learning environment changes, so does the musician's approach to learning instruments. The way we learn has changed drastically through the age of technology. And like traditional learning, you know, technology has evolved it to giving us anything and everything. You can, if you want to know something, you can get on a digital device, you can get on your computer, you can get on your phone, and you can figure it out. I think that learning an instrument has never been so accessible on an entry-level basis. And I think that if you want to play music and you want to pick it up as a hobby, I think that you can do it today. And I don't even think, as far as percussion goes, you can start with your hands.
That's true.
Which is so wonderful. And like, there's so many different percussion instruments, and stuff you learn on the tabla has crossover with regular drums.
Yeah, it translates. That's true. And so I think like, I mean, because I learned guitar pretty much exclusively off YouTube, to be honest.
Which is wild.
Well, and like, it's also at odds with thinking like, you know, there's so many guitar greats that we think about that taught, you know, whoever taught themselves their instruments. It's like, well, they had no resources to do it, right? It's like they're listening to a record spin and they're like, I'm going to learn how to, like, I'm gonna figure out how to play it, like play these 6 strings and it sounds like this recording.
Yeah.
Whereas like I was pretty easily exposed to like, oh, this is what a scale is, this is what all the notes on the guitar neck are, guitar tab as well. Like there's a widening of like what you can learn. So I think it is a lot easier to pick up any instrument nowadays, which I think I certainly do feel like it is a great thing, because we don't have to go around reinventing the wheel. It's like all of the groundwork we can you can get off the ground pretty quickly nowadays with a lot of instruments.
Yes. Though
Though I do feel still that for some instruments, it is important to actually have a teacher for them.
Yep.
Because there are certainly right ways to do certain things, or more efficient ways to do certain things. The groundwork of like thinking about music, I think is pretty accessible, but I think the mechanical aspects, still you might need somebody to show you the ropes, whether it's a teacher or just somebody else that plays the instrument, which I suppose you could also classify as a teacher in this sort of like teacher-student relationships with people. But I think it is important to have somebody else that can show you the most efficient or more efficient way to create a sound on an instrument.
I found that my musical freedom is cultivated through like hours of just playing.
Yes.
Sitting down and actively being in front of the drum set and just playing, using traditional practices like reading tab or playing with a metronome, like doing those like sticks and stones things before, stuff they were doing way before technology. Just actively being there is what's most important, and playing hours and using a metronome and listening to the song. Practices that have been around since drummers started researching and studying music are still the most effective.
Yeah.
And technology is just like, if you have that base layer, then technology is just introduced even more.
Because I feel as though learning any instrument, you should learn the basic sounds and get them to sound as good as possible before you move on to like crazier things. Because it's fun to play the crazy things, but you want it to be clean. Like with tabla, it's like there's stories of like people I would consider tabla masters. It's like a tabla master's son is going out to play in the morning, right? And his dad is sitting playing the like most basic sound. It's like just like a strike, open like sort of strike, right? And he just continuously doing that, and his son goes out to play, and when his son comes back in the evening, his dad is still doing that same sound.
Yeah.
Because that's the way that's their attitude towards it, and that this sound should be perfect, and this sound should be perfect as well. So that when I put them together, it's like I don't have to worry about the quality of these sounds. It's just I know that I can get it up to speed, and I know that like it's sounding how I want it to. And now I can start to do whatever I want with it. That's when it comes into like, now the internet's open to me. Like, I can play these sounds cleanly. So if I see a chain of them, it doesn't matter, because I have confidence that I'm playing this, in a way that sounds right.
All right, yeah. Let's talk about the future. Let's wrap this up. Right? We're deep. Let's wrap it up. What does the future of music education look like, and what does the future of music creation look like?
Yeah.
So let's start with the future of music education.
Yeah, I think it is a similar situation where I don't know how many people are going to seek out teachers as time goes on. I think it's pretty easy to like, you can get a guitar for not too much money, and you can see like, oh, this is how I play it, and like you learn it. It's what I did, right? Like you learn it on the internet, and you have a lot of fun with it, and you're figuring it out on your own. If that's something that you really want to do, but I still also feel as though there are people that are going to have the attitude towards music where it's like, I have to learn this from a teacher. Like I want to learn this from a teacher. I want to learn this the correct way, because the reason I feel that a lot of people will opt out of that, though, is because there's such a oversaturation of content on the internet. Like, we're being exposed to so much, like, music. Especially if you play music or are into, like, any music thing, or, your Instagram knows that you're into music things and it's recommending that. Like, you're seeing just, like, so much music on a daily basis.
Yeah.
That, like, And you know, you're not seeing a lot of practicing, right? You're seeing a lot of people just like playing the final product. So it's like I think a lot of people are going to go for that initially.
Well said.
So that's kind of my thoughts towards where music's going. It's just I feel that more people are going to maybe try to pick up instruments as time goes on, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Like more people playing music is more people playing music, but I think the ones that really want to do it will stick with it, and the ones that don't really won't, you know?
As far as the future of music creation goes, I'm optimistic. I would like to see technology be used in a good way. And I think that if there's a takeaway, it's that more people are playing. It's just that more people are in front of their instrument, and whether it be a hobby or you want to take it to the top, that'll be determined on how much effort you want to put in.
That's true.
But just people playing is just always a good thing. And I think music is very freeing for people. And I would like to see technology play a positive role. And I think there's room for it. And I think it's very scary to... I think it's scary to be a musician in the age of technology, and especially with AI around, and with how much we're being exposed to. It's like
it's discouraging sometimes. But dude, and I'll say as like someone that has like some electronic music like stuff going on. You know, as time goes on as well, just generally the sounds that were like the quality of sound that are accessible for electronic music producers. I don't know how you feel about programmed drums or anything like that, but they can sound really good now, and guitar plugins, even since I started doing electronic music like 5 years ago, have gone so good. Like the instrument plugins generally sound so good now. You can make it sound as though you have a whole orchestra in your home just by using a plugin you can download for I don't know, like $50, or free if you're looking in the right places. But
that being said, I mean, learning, and then you have to learn the program.
It's true.
I know nothing about electronic drums, but I know that I'm going to have to know a lot about electronic drums, and programmed drums. Although, like, I love recording drums, I'm gonna have to know about programmed drums. So, dude, at the end of the day, it's about learning.
Whatever it is, you're going to have to be an artist about it at some point.
And, the real ones who are making real art and putting heart into it, that stuff always rises to the top. So although, it may be scary for live musicians to be hearing programmed stuff, the most creative and the most artistic, and what's most passionate and what's most worked hard for is going to rise to the top.
And it's the challenge of being able to match someone. I mean, if we're thinking about like, I listened to this and I tried to play it. Like I listened to something on the radio and I tried to play it. I mean, it's the challenge of rising to like, I mean, hey, like if we're able to play the same things that if we're learning from programmed drums, we're all going to get bionic. You know what I mean? It's going to be really like people are going to be pretty solid if that's what we're learning. Because it's complex. It can get complex as well.
There's people whipping around the drum set at BPMs, beats per minute, that are unheard of. And there's people doing it right now and sharing that knowledge online. So I think that, we're going to get over a little hump of people upset about technology, but we're going to see a lot of cool things come out of it, a lot of creation. So that about wraps it up. All right. This has been a conversation with Madhav. I'm Flynn, and